Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pivoted Success Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jared Goldsmith of ESAX, and we're also joined by Sean Cochran of TCC Canada. We have a very special guest today, Kimothy Walker from Tiger Lily Marketing. Kimothy, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh my gosh, this is the highlight of my day, honestly. It actually is the highlight of my week. I get to hang out with people. It's awesome.
Well, usually people say it the opposite when they see me, but I'll take it. Thank you.
All good.
So, Kimothy, during these crazy uncertain times that have been going on for quite some time, and who knows how long it's going to go for, tell me a little bit about you. What is Tiger Lily Marketing? What are you all about?
So, Jared, let me just tell people, because you and I are on business meetings all the time, but just so that people understand what's going on here, because they might be distracted by activity.
Dogs, kids.
Well, yeah. The highlight of my COVID experience was I adopted a rescue dog. So this is Buddy. Hi. And whenever I'm on a call with you or with Ottawa Board of Trade or Invest Ottawa, he seems to think that I'm talking to him and that I need, his immediate attention. So I apologize in advance, but he seems to think that, this is his moment in the sun. So pivoting.
It's a dog's life, boy.
Yeah. Jared, you and I have talked about this in April. Holy cow, we were down 84% because a lot of our clients were events and Ottawa Race Weekend, big, 50 Sussex, all that kind of stuff. So April was looking almost traumatic, right? April, May, June. So we did do a pivot. I wouldn't say that we completely rejigged our business, but we started to pay a lot more attention to, which is how you and I did a lot of work together, which Ottawa Board of Trade, small to mediums, right? The SME group, we saw each other every Wednesday because you volunteered, I volunteered. So we started to pay attention to Main Street, because Main Street, I'm sure Sean can talk about this. Main Street, we knew was going to have a really difficult time. So I wouldn't say that we pivoted our business so much as we tried to figure out how to help those who were on the front lines of this in a way that we hadn't done before, because we're mostly corporate, right? So we wanted to figure out ways that Tiger Lily Marketing and every time I say that, you know this, but every time I say that, it warms my heart because it was named after my dad. We tried to figure out how to bring what we know with, our group has 100 years, literally 100 years of experience with marketing and communications, to the people that needed it most. And one of the very first things that I did was I offered our services for free.
That's a huge asset, Kimothy, but how nobody could have prepared for this. We hear it quite often. It's just out of left field, and the whole world's changed.
Right. And you're one of the last people that I hugged at social.
I haven't washed my hands since.
But at an event that you were hosting with, can you imagine, Su Ling Ching just joined Ottawa Board of Trade as the CEO. I saw her. I saw, Nikki Bridgeland from Rito Sports Center. Who could have imagined that, in the time literally that it took me to walk to get my car at the Shaw Center, that life was going to change in that time. So, Jared and Sean, we're almost at a year since that date.
It's scary to think it's been so long, especially when it first came down and they're like, it's just a couple of weeks. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. We'll sort this out. And here we are a year in, and not really a huge end in sight. Obviously there's whispers of the potential end, but who's to say how that's going to pan out, right? Yeah. So, Kimothy, just to take things back a little bit, tell us a little bit more about Tiger Lily Marketing and what sort of brought you to creating it in the first place.
Sure. So actually 7 years ago this month, well, next month, March, I left a little company that some people have heard of called CTV News. And I knew I wanted to do communications. That's kind of all I knew. I really didn't have a plan.
What is it that you enjoyed on working with CTV?
What I enjoyed, everything.
Yeah.
I loved my job, honestly. Like, I didn't leave because I didn't like it anymore. I loved my job. But I was 45 at the time. I had been doing it my entire adult life. Max Keeping hired me when I was 21 years old. And I just wanted to try something new. It was that simple. I wasn't laid off, as unfortunately, I know a lot of people have been. This was a personal choice for me that at 45 years old, I decided I wanted to try something new. Mm-hmm. And at the time, honestly, Sean, you're going to laugh out loud about this, I'm sure, but I thought, entrepreneurship, how hard could it be? So I'm very happy because you both know the stats, right, about entrepreneurship and failure rates in year 1, 5, and in our case now 7. So I decided that I wanted to storytell for entrepreneurs, which was my strength as, an investigative reporter, and I did W5 and some other stuff. I wanted to help people storytell and get their stories out there in a way that was effective. Tiger Lily was because my dad, who I lost on this journey, used to call me Tiger Lily. And it really resonated with me because tiger lilies are redheaded. Sean, I think that you could, appreciate this. They get buried in pounds of road salt in a Canadian winter, and they still bloom in the spring. And in Asia, where I've done some work, they're a sign of prosperity. So that's how tiger lily marketing was created. And we do everything from, websites and brands and all that kind of stuff. But Jared, I think that you and I are very aligned with the fact that it really comes down to the story. What are you trying to tell people about who you are and what you do? Because that actually helps you market and sell your product.
You know what? Some very important points there. Yeah, entrepreneurship's not easy. People tend to go head first without realizing that there's no water in the swimming pool. They have to do something about it and prepare ahead of time for potential pitfalls. Just because you have a great product or service, you might not know anything about business, and most people don't. But you said storytelling. That's huge, right? It's always about the experience. It doesn't matter what your services or products are. It has to be an experience.
Well, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday who is a new client. And again, like we were talking before, like I feel really reticent. We had 5 new clients this week. But I feel really reticent to share that because I know there are so many people suffering. Yeah. But we're doing really well. But this client has an amazing story, like just mind-blowingly amazing. Working with Indigenous and Métis and Inuit people. It's a coffee production house. I'm sure you both know who I'm talking about, and the story is really compelling, but I always say to people when it comes to marketing and comms, you can have the most amazing thing in the world, and if nobody knows about it, you can't sell it. Yeah. And if you don't have a compelling story on your website, on your branding, on your social media, you can't actually sell it because it's not going to resonate with people. So the storytelling part for me is so exciting because I listen to them. We have, a couple hours of conversations, often with some of our other team members, and then we figure out what are your key messages and what's your story. Because we can't do anything without a story.
Yeah, people talk about I'm the best kept secret, so and so. Well, you're not doing something right. You're not getting your story across.
Right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, totally. And I mean, this, one of my longest client, well, actually my longest client ever is Ross Video. And they did that. I'm not allowed to say the name. You know that big football game that happened a couple Sundays ago?
Yeah, I heard about it in the States, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm just not allowed to say it because it's branded, and they have ownership rights. But, there was like a big game, and there might have been like a big quarterback who's like famous. So Ottawa Technology did that, right? And we were able to, hashtag big game and stuff like that. And I remember this is part of the reason why I do what I do is I was in a bar. Don't all good conversations happen in a bar.
Yeah.
In Amsterdam with the CEO, David Ross, who I think he is the most amazing leader. And we were there 9 years ago. And I said, everybody needs to know about your company. Like, this is mind blowing what you're doing. Like, you've got robots, you've got live production, you're doing a whole bunch of TV shows that we have all watched that may sound like Got Talent. People turning around their chairs, all kinds of, stuff. But I think that that's an Ottawa thing. And I'll ask you both your opinion. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask you questions, but is that an Ottawa thing that we don't really brag about the fact that we had that big game on Sunday?
I have a feeling it's a Canadian thing. We hear this a lot. And one of the reasons, differences between the United States, let's say, and Canada is, well, at least from my experience and what I've heard, I do a bit of networking here and there. It's
everywhere.
People are much more timid to talk about their successes or what they're looking for. And so it's not, I would say it's not necessarily an Ottawa thing. What about you, Sean? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I find as the stereotype Canadians, we're overly polite. So it's just more overstepping that boundary that we've created in the sand of what is okay and not okay. Because again, sort of self-pushing and all that sort of stuff is kind of hard to deal with sometimes. And some people spend their entire times sort of pushing themselves onto you and all of their achievements. So you see that, especially in some of the bad cases, and you sort of take a step back, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kimothy, one of the ways you said you adopted and pivoted at the beginning was so generous of you, and the philanthropy part of you is to offer some of your products and your services, rather, complimentary. I know you, Invest Ottawa is a good client of yours, and you've been helping them out for a long time, Ottawa Board of Trade. It's this type of giving back that really helps people stay in business, not only for the bottom line, but it's that community giving and spirit that really is needed. And I think we're seeing that a lot during COVID. Well,
thank you for saying that, but I actually don't think, honestly, Jared, that I was alone. As you know, I worked for 30 years on the Chio Telethon, and gosh, can't even begin to, because I'm going to forget somebody, but like Heart Institute, the Royal Ottawa, all kinds of things. This is the community that we live in. Gosh, I slept on, when I was much younger, I slept on the streets for 5 nights for Operation Come Home, to see what it was like to be homeless, and, just little things like no bathrooms, right? This is the community that we live in. And I think that this is actually why we're doing so well, is that we care about others. We care about putting the masks on our face before everybody else was embracing it worldwide. We cared about leaving the grocery window from, I think it was like 7:30 to 8:30 for our senior citizens. Oh my gosh, those Christmas cards I mean, Jared, I think we're both from Orleans, right? The Christmas cards for that seniors facility, so that the seniors didn't feel vulnerable, they got like 10,000 Christmas cards. That's the community that we live in. And I think with COVID, um, it was emotional and it was painful, and we missed, I haven't seen my kids in now 14 months almost, but I think that we protect our neighbors. I think that that's what this city is about.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say would be some of the highlights during COVID, at least make it a bit more narrow-minded here in Ottawa, although it can be applicable to pretty much any city out there?
Yeah, I think the number one highlight for me would be that I think a lot of people have been doing a bit of soul searching.
Mm-hmm.
We were all running 100 miles an hour, right? And I don't just mean entrepreneurs. I mean this city, like people in government, people in Main Street, and I would say a highlight was that we were all kind of forced to reevaluate. I think that we really appreciate the ability to travel eventually a little more. I can't wait to get on a plane and land in Halifax, Nova Scotia and hug my kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we took it for granted. If I wanted to go to Montreal to see my parents, 2 hours later, I'm there. And now it's a thought process.
Yeah.
If you're allowed.
Yeah. And I think driving is relatively safe, but I'm not going near an airport anytime soon. And as you know, Jared, some of my family is in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can't cross a border. And my family are all people that are getting vaccinated probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, lucky
But
them.
I can't cross the border until I'm vaccinated.
Well, Kimothy, once everybody gets vaccinated, I want to line up and be one of the first ones to give you a hug back.
Oh my God, I'm going to hug the bejesus out of you. And I may do that to people I don't even know. I swear to God, because it's so like, one of the things, because I live alone, because my kids are, university age. I just think I'm going to run around, in Orleans, the farm boy, locally owned, love Jeff. I'm just going to go around and like hug random people.
This got me thinking, Kimothy. I just came up with a new hashtag RAH, random acts of hugging.
Right. I think
I just see people going on the street just hugging randomly and then tweeting about it. And
I know, but
post first.
I think that we need consent. I do feel it's important to ask people in advance, but yeah, but I'm going to be doing the like, oh my gosh, is it okay if I hug you? Because human beings, we don't do really well in isolation. We're communal type people, or so I think that that's been the hardest thing, is missing engagement, interaction, communication, sharing of ideas, face-to-face, going to social. Like, honestly, Jared, that night, can you imagine if we had known that was going to be our last time in a lovely restaurant eating wonderful food? Like,
I think we all would have taken some stock out in some of these social online providers back then. But Kimothy, I mean, in the marketing industry that you're in with Tiger Lily,
mm-hmm.
It's still like we said earlier, it's storytelling. It doesn't matter if we're in COVID or whatever. People still need to promote their organization in order to stay in business. What has changed for you? How have you changed your messaging for some of your clients? You don't have to name them, but just, is there any guideline for how you get messaging out these days during COVID?
What we did for ourselves and for a number of our clients went heavily into online. Because we couldn't go to the Mayor's Breakfast. We couldn't go to the Bob's. I mean, remember the Bob's?
Yeah.
Beautiful event by Michael Curran, race weekend. with 40,000 people. So we, in addition to our clients, went heavily online, promoting what we were doing, whether it was Ottawa Board of Trade breakfast or Invest Ottawa doing something related to Digital Main Street, making sure that people knew about that online and that they could join. I mean, I know we have all these jokes about, nobody wants another Zoom call. I'm not actually sure that's true, because some of our clients did just free concerts. I mean, look at what Dave Khalil was doing with fundraising just by doing his Piano Man thing, because people were craving for that sense of connection and they wanted to feel engaged. So, so online 100% became the new sexy.
Yeah. You know what? I think one of the reasons why Sean, when he came, suggested coming up with this podcast, the Pivot to Success podcast,
Right.
I mentioned quicklier, that new word, earlier, was that as a full-time musician and an event planner who hosts in-person events, 100% decrease overnight. There was no hope for both of these industries. Some of the hardest, boy, I need to have another coffee. Some of the most hardest hits industries out there. And at the beginning, even throughout much of the pandemic, people were looking for toilet paper, virtual event platforms. So I adapted quite easily, if you will, by coming across this amazing platform. And it's changed my life. But I want to hear more about you. And Sean, let's pass it over to Sean maybe to field some questions.
Yeah, Kimothy, I'm just very curious. So you're saying, so the messaging changed and obviously online was a big thing. As we progress through this, have there been things that specifically are sort of a takeaway for post-pandemic world that you can still utilize that's sort of a new tool in the tool belt type of thing?
Yeah. One of the things that I kind of laugh about, honestly, Sean, is my job was to be on television for 25 years, and then I was in media, for 30 years total. I still am, if you count, radio and stuff. One of the things that I love, Sean, is I totally gave up. Like, I have no makeup on right now. None.
My makeup's dried out, by the way.
And I don't care. I don't do my hair, and I used to agonize about viewers who would write in about the fact that, I have like wild hair. It's always been a thing. And now I don't care. My dog is in my phone calls. One of the things that I really hope that we don't forget when we recover is authenticity. You're here in my office. My daughter did that piece of artwork for me for Mother's Day. I really hope that we don't go back to pretense. I wouldn't know what to do with a pair of high heel shoes right now, honestly. I've worn like slippers and Crocs around my house for almost a year. That's one of the things that I think is like super cool is like we can be in meetings and somebody's cat just like walks across the keyboard and we're all like, all right, there's a cat. I think that has shown us to be wonderfully authentic and real, and no more pretense, no more, I took an hour to do my hair and, I got silver parts coming in here and we're okay with that. I think that that's a better way to do business without like all the pretense.
Oh, I have quite a few videos talking about networking and entrepreneurship, and I have quite a few talking about being genuine, being authentic. And if anything, I absolutely agree with you, Kimothy. This will hopefully have people at least realize that this is who they are. They're in your dining room, your living room, your house. Like, yeah, you see your skinny cat, Andrew Scott, walking around.
Walking along with the tail,
And I hope that this will continue going forward, because one of the reasons people, at least in my mind, never really appreciated the networking. They called it fake. You always try to put your best hat forward and you try to puff yourself up in order to get business. No, people do business with those they could actually trust. And I think this is bringing out a lot of that.
Well, and I hope it gives everybody a bit of a shake-up too, you know? So, I mean, people are real people behind all of it, whether you're marketing yourself, selling yourself, discussing whatever it is. At the end of the day, this is my living room, this is my cat, these are things just like you have. We're all the same, really. Why are we pretending that we don't have this whole real life behind us, right?
Well, and to Sean's point too, and Jared, I know that in the meetings that we've been having with Ottawa Board of Trade, mental health, right? Like, you know, I don't want to pretend that this isn't hard. Like, I love the fact that, you know, we can see dogs and backgrounds, but this is hard for a lot of people. They're losing their businesses, and I know that we're trying to be kind of optimistic, but the other thing that I've really honestly enjoyed is this hit at a time that I was coming out of grief from losing my dad. Like, my dad died in my arms kind of grief. And one of the things that I think has been really positive about this experience for all of us is our ability to talk about grief, loss, can't see my kids, can't hug people, live alone, can't go to a grocery store without, you know, double masking and all this other kind of stuff. So to Sean's point, we're more authentic and more real with each other, and we're not pretending anymore to have life by the tail. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has their fill in the blank. I'm not going to swear on your podcast. Everybody has their fill in the blank going on. I think it's lovely that we are all now able to share the fact that this is hard. It's hard.
Yeah, you know, I'm appreciative that you brought up the word mental health. That's a huge issue. Actually, Sean and his team over at TCC Canada have recently launched a new initiative for mental health for entrepreneurs.
That's amazing.
Yeah, for us, one of the hardest things is just watching people suffer in silence. So many different entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, are sitting on their own as it is. But at least they used to have some sort of interaction, and maybe their business has been devastated. I mean, I don't even know, but just creating a platform for people to get together and discuss anything, but to help each other out. Because again, one of the things is it's really hard to ask for help. And when you're in a community with people that you can have an open conversation with, you can say, oh, well, I had to fire my marketing person, for example, because I can't afford it and I don't know what to do. And you do that. Well, you know what we could do is help. And maybe there's something we could work so that you help me with some service and I help you with a service. And all of a sudden you've got help and you're not as desperate. So it's just about connecting people so that they have the opportunity to say, oh, I can help you. I got 5 minutes, no problem. Whereas to somebody else, it could be so insurmountable that you're just sitting there devastated thinking, I guess this is it. I'm going to have to give up because I have no way of getting out of this awful hole I've been handed.
But Sean, could you have imagined before COVID, you and I and Jared having this really transparent conversation? We never would have done this before COVID. No. We would have been, no, we're all good, right? We're all good.
I think about how many hours you would have spent in driving or taking the bus back and forth to get to your meetings. And again, we could talk forever about how much more productive people are, or perhaps not so much, as much. But those who are self-motivated, at least the small business owners who tend to be very self-motivated, how much more productive we are.
Yeah.
And
well, I think one of the big things, sorry to cut you off there, Jared, is I think we've gotten with the whole shift to this online world is everybody's got their sort of Insta perfect or Pinterest perfect image of what their life really is. And now we're starting to see that that's not true. And people are falling apart. People are having problems. It isn't this perfect world. And we're all starting to get to a point that we can be like, you know what? It's not perfect. Somebody's screaming over there or whatever, right?
or their dogs come into like, meetings and stuff like that because, this is, and apparently he's a little sleepy. I love what you're saying there, Sean, because, I did work in TV for a bit, and it's all about the look and so the authentic part really appealed to me because when I was suffering after the loss of my dad, I just felt that I had to put on the happy face, right? Like, oh, we heard your dad died. Are you okay? Oh, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Kimothy, we only have maybe about another 10 minutes left. What does your future hold? Where do you think Tiger Lily is going to be in about 6 months from now? If you could forward thinking a little bit.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that today, Jared, because we've had a lot of questions from small businesses. And small businesses who need some help. And as you know, I'm a sucker for small businesses. So we've been trying to figure out a way that we can help them. So we're now looking at developing other things that might be training courses, might be online tools that small businesses can use. Particularly not-for-profits, because they're having a tough time, right? So we're trying to figure out ways that we can still pay our team, but help those. We're doing a lot of work these days with people who are into recovery mode, right? So they kind of hit the snooze button.
For a year, perhaps.
Yeah, for a year, almost, yeah. And now they're looking at hopeful relaunching, rejuvenation. How do we rebuild? So that's interesting for us because that's new content, right? Because we've never really had to look at a rebuild because we never had a global disaster. So, yeah, I think for us, honestly, it's going to be about 2 years where we are in rebuild mode. I think probably until 2023.
Well, you talked about content, and it's such a valuable asset for people looking for content or creating their own original content. I mean, most recently we held an ESACS event with W. Brett Wilson, Mike LeCurn, publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal, was our MC, Su Ling Ching, Ottawa Board of Trade, Mayor Watson from the City of Ottawa was there. And it was a huge resource. You were on the call, Sean. And just helping people share ideas amongst themselves and just collaborate, communicate again.
The thing for me is like, and I almost get kind of like, misty-eyed thinking about it, is that storytelling is part of the human condition since we became humans, right? I feel incredibly blessed that my life has all been about storytelling. It is truly a gift, but you need to, for marketing communications, you need to make sure that your story is effective and, key messages, all those things that both of you know, so that you can be heard, because we're getting a lot of noise on the internet, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in our community who have a really good story. What sets them apart is whether or not they have done that work on making sure that their story can be heard. We've all seen, the story that comes out and goes viral because we're all like, wow, that's an incredible story. So it's not just a matter of having a really good story. What we try to do is help people realize what's magical about their story in terms of marketing, or just sharing. I mean, they might just have like a really cute dog and a snowy owl on a pole. but these are things that you need to kind of understand the dynamic of it. So I just consider myself a modern day storyteller, really. And then putting that into a strategic plan so that people can share their stories. But Like,
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it too, from a storytelling perspective. I know from marketing, I mean, obviously that's always sort of the general idea, but really getting specific with something that matters or is something significant, I think that's so important. If you had, say, one word of wisdom or something for companies looking to turn things around and really just get past this, what would you say to them that they could do from a marketing perspective that would really help them sort of push off from the standstill that we're sort of at still today?
I really hate the word pivot. I really, really hate it. So I'm going to use the word transition. All the rules went out the window. The ones that are doing really well are those that were willing, open, and ready for transition. We're not going to be in the same place for a long time.
I equated it. Actually, my father said to me back when COVID started, he says, look, musician, event planner, it's like when automobiles came out and you're selling horses. You need to change or you're not going to have a business. And it really hit home to me. He was absolutely right. And so now, because of COVID, if you don't transition or you don't see, people talk about the writing on the wall, if you don't have that vision of where things might be in the future, and it comes back to the planning.
I want to hear your dad. Your dad is smart. That's amazing. Yeah, no, but so change agility, that's a word that I use a lot in what we do. There are people who are change agile, and there are people who just like we've always done it this way.
Well, it's a lot easier to change or transition if you're a one-person business instead of like, I don't know, a Ross.
Yeah, although I have to say, like, Ross did like super amazing stuff, right? Like David Ross, like, raised the minimum wage for all of his frontline workers, hired 200 people, did that big show, that sports thing that we talked about on a Sunday with a quarterback, like wildly changed with a staff of almost 1,000 people. So I think that whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have 1,000 people and products in 140 countries, it's a mind thing, right? Is, okay, this is the life we've been given. This is the reality. Jared, you and I have talked about this many times over the course of a year, because like you transitioned or pivoted like nobody's business. You just, yeah, it's sad. You deal with your grief, and then you need to go, okay, so new reality. What are we doing here?
You know, that's exactly it. I mean, when I realized, you know, what the situation was, at least for music, I've been playing for over 35 years, Kimothy, my saxophones, and I realized, I don't know if I'm going to go back to it. It's been my love, my passion, my sense of security, all of that, all these years. And just to shelve it and find something else that works, never say never, but right now, I'm not focused on music at all. I live vicariously through my YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I think that part of what we need to do is acknowledge our sadness, our loss, and our grief.
Yeah.
This is hard stuff. Like, you know, I went to, Jared, you and I don't live that far from each other, but I went to our neighborhood grocery early this morning, and, you know, had my mask on and, you know, my old lady glasses and a hat. And I thought, isn't it weird that I could walk in here and see a friend and they wouldn't even know it's me because I've got a hat on and, you know, the glasses and the mask.
Well, there's nothing wrong with hats, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love hats, but that's the symbol of you. But I just thought it was so isolating to be invisible. I was completely invisible, right? Normally I would see someone I know and I would stop and chat. And,
yeah.
You know,
and now when you think, oh, you're going to go sit for coffee with somebody at a local place, you second guess?
Yeah. And actually, like the only, I had somebody that, well, I mean, you know, Andre Page, obviously, who she dropped off a Valentine's Day gift, and we sat in the snow on my front step with our dogs on Valentine's Day, and she's my business partner. And we sat there, and I thought, what a strange world we live in, where I can't even invite her into my home, and we're sitting in the snow in my driveway, right? Like, but I think we've all been adaptable, and that's where the change agility comes in. Is all right, I'm doing this because I need to protect another human being from anything that I might pick up in my travels to the very exciting gas station, Shoppers Drug Mart, or the Sobeys. You know, so my job is to make sure that I protect other human beings. That's my very exciting life. But I think that we all have a responsibility, and I think we could do a whole other show on people who don't do that. We wanted to focus on optimism and what we're doing to support our community, and I believe that's that.
Well, you know, Kimothy, you're a shining example of those who go out of their way to support community, get involved, get engaged, and make things happen for the better and help other people in small business. So thank you for everything you do. And that pretty much wraps up our time here. So on behalf of Sean Cochran from TCC Canada, myself, Jared Goldsmith from ESACS, I want to thank and welcome our featured guest, Kimothy Walker from Tiger Lily Marketing.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.